We are here today doing the Q&A panel Withdrawal with Mr. Aaron Strand and baby. I'm so excited that we have his daughter here with us today. See, even the young people want to join us. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much for
Yes. Oh,
coming.
she's
And
a huge Withdrawal fan, as you can
she's,
tell. So,
I mean, she's adorable and she's so quiet. I'm like, here's a strange person talking. And she's just like, it's all good, Dad. Everything is fine. You're fine. Um, I I want to begin with a question that I didn't ask you last time. I know in your past you have performed off Broadway. Now, I think there's a misnomer out there. A lot of times people gravitate automatically to Broadway and they're like, "Oh, I know I've made it when I performed on Broadway, etc." To me personally, I think there's a lot of advantages to doing the off-Broadway circuit. So, tell me a bit about that. Meaning, was it a niche where you were comfortable with, and were you disappointed at all that you weren't doing the whole Broadway thing?
no, I mean, I was so lucky when I was young. I was still in training. I was still a student at NYU training at the
Yeah.
Stella Adler studio. And a director that had like an outside director they had brought in to teach one of the end of year projects at Stella Adler um, cast me in this play called The Band Who Ate Michael Rockefeller. And it was a very cool play. It was about Michael Rockefeller, who is the youngest son of John D. Rockefeller, who he there's a certain sort of Godfather type element to his story. Like the family wanted to groom him for kind of bigger and better things, but he kind of had the soul of an artist. So he after graduating from school, he worked as a sound engineer for a documentary about Papua New Guinea, about the birds of Papua New Guinea. And so he went with this documentary crew out to Papua New Guinea, and he fell in love with the art out there. And they have the Michael Rockefeller wing at the Met was just redone, and you see
Okay.
these giant wood carvings from people from Papua New Guinea. And Michael Rockefeller fell absolutely in love with this. Well, on his second trip back to Papua New Guinea to collect this art and bring it back to New York to get it recognized, he disappeared and he's never been found. And some of the tribes in Papua New Guinea do practice cannibalism, and it has often been speculated, like, was he eaten? There's certain narratives that are not exactly PC, but questioning like, did he go native, like this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. There's like kind of a Colonel Kurtz element to it. Did what? And there's been stories that he's been sighted like deep in the jungle of Papua New Guinea since, or like has been a captive, like all this crazy stuff. And basically, this. Sorry, I'm on like a huge Michael Rockefeller tangent. Basically, this play was told from the perspective of the tribespeople where they were speaking normal English. And I
Okay.
played Michael Rockefeller, who spoke to them in like a crazy, like made up language.
Okay.
Um, as I was the outsider that was like untranslatable. And so, and I was the one who was like all weird, and they were like very normal.
Sure.
And so, anyway, I got cast in this play. It was awesome. It got picked up for a second run and like moved to an off Broadway theater. Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience. I mean, at the same time, I was also like working at the box down on the Lower East Side, and so I
Mm.
like there was a period of my life where I was in studio, leaving, taking the train up to the West Side to perform in this play, and then going down to the Lower East Side to work at the box till 5 in the morning, and then getting up at 8 to
Ouch.
do it all over again. And I mean,
Oh,
but I was like in heaven. I mean, I was 20 years old. I was living the dream.
all right.
I thought it was like the coolest thing. I mean, Edward Albee like came to the play and flirted with me. I was like, I've made it. Everyone, just what every young actor wants, an 80-year-old Edward Albee trying to pick you up after a play. And so, no, I thought it was, I thought it was incredible. I had been being sent out on Broadway musicians, but I was always uh, I was very insecure about my voice. I was not as good of a singer as really what you need to be on Broadway, and I couldn't dance, still can't really dance. And
Okay.
so those aspirations were never really my thing. I always wanted to be in the sort of like downtown, sort of like edgier art scene. And at that time in my life, I was like, I was there and I was loving every minute of it.
Nice. Very, very nice. I want to switch over and ask you a question because through your films, you've done the film festival circuit for a while. So I'm always curious to ask filmmakers this. Over time and having this experience, and this is for people who might watch that have yet to get into the circuit, or looking for information. What have you learned through your journey? Anything you can tell us about film festivals in general? Some people hate them, some people love them, some people are giving up on them. Where do you stand?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's complicated, you know. This film festival ecosystem really emerged and developed for and served a purpose within a film marketplace that no longer exists. The core promise of we will put your film, if you make a film, we will put it up on a screen so that you can then sell it. We are offering you exposure that you can then leverage to bigger opportunities. Well, now those bigger opportunities in all likelihood aren't going to come unless you're in a few sort of like potentially top brand name festivals. But you look even at the sales coming out of Sundance every year, they just go down and down and down.
Yeah.
There's an incredible website called Distribution Advocates that prints all this data about film distribution, and one of the most shocking stats that I saw was around it was basically like how much money is spent on films trying to get into Sundance. And keep in mind, 16,000 films are submitted to Sundance every year. So the
Yep.
spend on this money on these projects is somewhere, I think it's around like $4 or $5 billion is like spent on those projects.
Holy
And
cow.
then the sales return coming out of Sundance is like not even hitting 100 million. So if you just look at the sort of like the disparity in finances, like this all feels incredibly unsustainable. And I think that people are very frustrated because at this point, film festivals, they're the art they the artists are the customers in many ways.
Yeah.
And it feels it doesn't feel good to sort of be in that position, and plus to take place in this giant sort of pick me culture that feels very exclusionary. But you know, this is taking place in sort of a broader context of artists looking for new and creative ways to reach audiences, because the core problem that we have is not that we don't have dope films, it's that those dope films are not being delivered to the audiences that care about them.
Yes.
So, you know, I still think that film festivals serve a role within that ecosystem. But you know, it's just a tough balance of like how much money can you spend towards it? Like, at what point do you have to cut yourself off? And then once you get the opportunity, how are you going to leverage it? And how are you going to like try to maximize that exposure opportunity? Are you going to suit up and show up, or are you just like there to collect laurels? You know, and so I don't know. All this to say, I feel very mixed. I think a lot of the criticisms are valid, but I also feel that the film festival circuit has been very helpful to Withdrawal, and I've had a wonderful time going around and meeting people that I would have never met otherwise. And those interpersonal connections are invaluable, and are really the point of this medium, is bringing people together. So I don't know.
You betcha. And if you folks want to learn more about Sundance and rejection, go to his social media, because I see that you did a video on Sundance rejection. You also did a video. So just throw it out there because I saw some of it. What do you think about this proposed Netflix merger?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know, like, what's worse, you know?
Right?
Ted Sarandos swooping in, who fundamentally believes that cinemas are irrelevant and antiquated delivery systems. Or do you want the Ellisons and like backed by Saudi funding to come in and take over Warner Brothers? I think, I mean, just pick your poison. I don't know
Yeah.
which option's worse. I think that the only thing that can definitively be said is that David Zaslav is a coward, and David Zaslav is such a joke for masquerading around as this media mogul, buying oh god sorry, my brain is going in like
No,
five
no,
directions at once, but
that's okay.
you know, taking out Jack Warner's desk and like pretending to celebrate Hollywood's history and masquerading around as some sort of big shot, when
Oh, yeah.
all he was doing all along him and John Malone were just prepping this company to throw it to the wolves and walk away with hundreds of millions of dollars. I think
Yeah.
it's a great disservice to like the legacy of Warner Brothers, and to the history of art in this country, and they should be ashamed.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Um, since I have your daughter listed on here, so you now have two children, correct?
I do.
Okay. So, life as a parent. Are you asking yourself, because we will talk about withdrawal? Obviously, you had a past like we all do, and sometimes some of us, our past isn't as terrific as our current is. So, at some point, do you feel that you'll be comfortable enough to speak with your children about your life prior to now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's my responsibility to be honest with them. Um, you know, I mean, it's a huge concern. Addiction is genetic. It runs through families. Um, it wasn't spoken about in my family to the point where when I was asked to briefly go to an outpatient rehab program, and I'll never forget my intake meeting. The guy running the program, who was like this big, ridiculous Colonel Sanders looking guy with like tons of taxidermy in his office, which just made the whole situation very surreal. And he asked me, is there addiction in your family? And I said, no, because we never spoke about it.
Mm,
Not knowing the fact that every male on both sides of both on my mom's side and on my dad's side, were alcoholics and drug addicts. Um, and it just wasn't spoken about.
yeah.
And so, yeah, so I feel a sense of responsibility. I talked to my little cousins about it, and
Okay.
I'm very open and honest with them. I'm certainly going to talk to my daughters about it once they're old enough to begin to understand. And and I just pray that they don't have to go through the same experiences that I did. But I
Right.
certainly want them to have access to the solution should they need it.
Oh, yeah. And also, I have to ask you as a creative, because you have two children now, have you been able to find a proper balance so far so you can satisfy yourself creatively and, of course, be dad?
I mean, what is a proper balance?
Right.
I don't know. I'm in this. I mean, I'm in such a weird place right now. First of all, I mean, shout out to my wife who is not in the arts, works a normal job, and like gets our health insurance. I mean, if I didn't have that, like
Nice.
my life would look drastically different. But I am right on the cusp of where I've created this weird job because when I'm not making films, I'm screening old films, and I do a
Mhm.
live history show where I screen an old film. I give a little historical context before the movie plays, and
Sure.
sometimes we'll do like giveaways or like costume contests. It's a live event, and then afterwards we do an audience discussion after the movie, and it's a big party. It's a celebration of cinema culture, but more importantly, it's about lowering the barriers of entry and enhancing the access to some of these greatest movies ever made. It's called Behind the Slate. I do
Yeah.
shows in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Athens, Georgia. And this has become like kind of like I'm afraid to even say it because it's just like, what is my life? It's become like a job,
Yeah.
where like where I'm able to like like kind of keep my head above water a little bit, like doing these live events, and it's incredibly exciting. But there is no semblance of balance. I feel like I'm running around with my head cut off between marketing withdrawal, putting on these live shows, taking care of the kids. I'm a stay-at-home dad for the time being, just till we get through the holidays.
Yeah.
And then also trying to get like future projects off the ground. I mean, how are we supposed to juggle all this? In a society that like doesn't like intellectually values what we do, but doesn't monetarily value what we do.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. I don't
It
know.
is.
It
It,
it it, it takes a lot of like a teacher told me this in school. The only the hardest thing for an artist to do, and the most important thing for an artist to do in their adult life, is you have to develop a talent for your talent. Like the talent is
okay.
going to be there regardless. You can trust it. However, you need to work your butt off figuring out a way to protect that talent, figuring out a way to make sure that it stays alive, because the world will destroy that little flame inside of you.
Oh yeah.
And some of that means just, how do you stay calm in the midst of all this uncertainty and insecurity? And that can be uncertainty and insecurity from a global perspective of just like reading the news, but also like in my own life. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm now in the business of live events. My ability to earn income is dependent on how many tickets I sell every month, and some months are better than others, and that's it. It is terrifying. It's very stressful, but I have to keep reminding myself that like, this is awesome. I can't believe I get to do this. And so, yeah, I have no idea what balance looks like. I am just trying to take it one day at a time and keep and trying to stay true to the mission, which is like, live a life devoted to cinema.
And you're doing a fabulous job. I know sometimes it's hard. And trust me, I know all about the balance thing. I'm doing it as we speak, but it comes to you eventually, actually. And do you still have time to do commercial work? Because I know you've done all of that.
Yeah, I try. Yeah. I mean, I have to actually get a job, an edit done before Christmas right now. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, trying to. I mean, how many plates can you keep in the air at once? I don't know. I think
Just
right now
breathe.
I'm at about like 8 or 9. So
Oh
like,
gosh. And we have a
yeah.
happy baby though. I mean, see, look at
Oh yeah,
that.
we do have a very happy baby. She's
See,
actually kind of passing
that is
out right
definitely a
here.
good thing. I was looking at
Yes.
you the other day and thinking to myself, have you done or have you tried, just throwing this out there, modeling before? I'm like, typically when people start doing film and other things, they sometimes they will come from a modeling background and because it's somewhat lucrative. So I was curious to ask, did you ever try that?
I did when I was younger. I was never very I was never very good at it. I mean, I started off as an actor,
Okay.
and and yeah, I messed around, but I was never I was never very good at it. I'm a little taller than like what the like traditional male model is, and it's certainly at this point I'm quite a bit heavier than what the traditional male model is. Um, and so no, it never really worked out. I just was never very comfortable. I was never I could I don't I struggle to be fierce on film. I struggle I struggle to be like fierce and like, or like dark sexy. Like I just
It's
can't do it.
okay.
I'm a
Well,
nerd. I'm a
oh,
nerd at heart. I'm better leaning into my nerdness.
alrighty then. Speaking of nerdness, I'll ask you this final question before we talk about the film. As you mentioned, you do a film history podcast. So I'm curious to ask, do you think 10 years from now, when you're talking about historical films or films that were really relevant, do we have Hollywood films that you would even call historical at this point? I'm a little concerned about the quality that comes out of Hollywood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Well, the I mean, Hollywood in terms of like the traditional studios,
Yes.
we'll have some. I think we'll talk about Sinners. We'll talk about One Battle After Another. We'll talk
Hmm.
about some of those original stories, and not just Ryan Coogler and Paul Thomas Anderson, but also the legacies of Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, the
Yeah.
executives at Warner Brothers that greenlit those films and approved those budgets. I think we'll talk about that. I think most of the history of Hollywood at this time will be about decline, will be about scarcity, will be about technological disruption,
Hmm.
and and sort of post-streaming changes. And yeah, we'll probably be discussing things. I would imagine we'll be discussing things sort of in terms of, the late 60s, when um, uh, Hollywood was in an existential decline due to television, and the new Hollywood films came in, and took all these risks. I imagine we'll be telling some sort of story of rebirth and regeneration. And but I don't exactly know what that will look like yet. And we'll probably be talking about a lot of the films that come out of Hollywood the same way that we talk about Dr. Dolittle in 1967, which was nominated for an Academy Award despite being an absolutely terrible movie. And
That
so,
tends to happen sometimes.
yeah.
Gosh. So, Withdrawal, correct me if I'm mistaken. Last I looked, are we at two awards or are we at more now at this point?
Oh, awards? Yeah, well, we have had a very fortunate run. We have won nine major awards along the
Nice.
circuit. Every festival that we have been awards eligible, we have taken home a major award, which is very, very cool. And there's
Yes.
also been a lot of diversity in the awards, where everything we're getting everything from best feature, sometimes best local feature for our Georgia festivals, for some
Yeah.
Georgia festivals here, but also best actress. Millie Rose Evans won best actress out in Japan at the Kanazawa Film Festival. Emily
Nice.
Marquet, our director of photography, won best cinematography at Queens World Film Festival.
Mhm.
So, and then I've also won a best director award. So I think the diversity of awards that we've been honored with has been really the coolest thing, and a celebration of sort of the total effort of the film.
Absolutely. So I want to start off with you have listed September 2021 as far as withdrawal, which means it's now 2024. That's listed on the Film Freeway. Did you know that?
It's September 2021.
Unless I'm mistaken. I'm like, did I misread that? Because I thought that sounds odd to me. Because I found that just like on the Film Freeway for I want to say you, that's where I saw
Uh-huh.
the two awards, but I didn't see the other one. So I figured you just didn't update that as far as the awards go. But I just wanted to clarify that because I'm like, that didn't sound right to me.
Hmm.
So somewhere I came across that info and I'm like, wait, that's not right.
Let's see here.
Since I
On the
have you here.
awards page.
Yeah, on the awards, well, I saw on Film Freeway there's two awards, which is why I questioned you about it, because I figured there were more than that, which is fine. It's just a matter of
Hmm.
updating or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not seeing the 2021. I'm not sure where that is.
Hmm.
But I'll have to
Well,
double check
no, no, no. I just
around.
wanted to throw that out there. I'm like, okay. Um, One of the things that I noticed is you use different types of cameras, one of which using super 16 millimeter. Not
Mhm.
something we come across very often, and I love to talk about it because nobody ever does it. So I'm hoping that you'll answer this question and tell people why they should be utilizing super 16 millimeter.
Yeah, well, shooting on 16 is like the dream. I mean, if I
Yeah.
could have shot the whole movie on 16, I would have definitely considered it. Even though it like what is one of our earliest artistic choices to shoot on DV, but I love 16 that much,
Yeah.
that had we had the budget for that much film stock, I would have I would have entertained the notion. We this use of Super 16 was super limited. It only appears in a couple shots in the film,
Right.
and it's literally a byproduct because our director of photography, my dear friend Emily Marquet, as she was driving down to Athens, Georgia, where we shot the movie the first time, she just called me up and was like, "Hey, like I just bought a Bolex from a friend. Like, do you want to go in on a couple reels and like see if we could just see what we could get?" And so that was literally like us kind of shooting just on the by the seat of our pants. We picked a couple spots that we thought it would be appropriate um, in the story,
Yeah.
and supported with the format change, and utilized it there. Luckily, we also have a Kodak Film Lab here in Atlanta, Georgia, that's very, very supportive
Mhm.
for indie artists. Gave us a great rate on processing and the digital transfer. And so that was all very easy. We didn't have to like mail it anywhere. We just literally like brought it to the office.
Perfect.
Um, so we definitely had help in that regard. And yeah, I mean, it's just a beautiful format. I would love to shoot with it more. And anytime you have the opportunity or you find yourself in a position to play with it, I mean, gosh, go for it. They do an incredible 100 feet of film challenge here in Atlanta,
Mhm.
where all you have to do is sign up and they will give you 100-foot roll to make a movie. And then
Nice.
they screen them all on the same night. So then you go and like watch like 40, minute and a half
Yeah.
films. It's really, really cool.
I bet it is. My gosh. Now, one of the strongest things that comes through this movie, of course, is opioids. I can talk today. So I want to ask you, because I've asked other people this question before, but sometimes when a person is in the throes of addiction, what that actually looks like to them at that time and now are very different. So if I were to ask you today, how do you view opioids? And when I say this, I mean, I used to smoke cigarettes for 9 years. Is it appealing to me anymore? every once in a blue moon, but by and large, I equate that to the worst parts of myself, if that makes sense. So I ask you, do you feel now at this point that that looks very different for you, or is there ever a point where you still feel somewhat vulnerable?
Well, I feel very fortunate, that I don't think about opioids anymore. I really don't. Where when I get stressed out and, when I get stressed out, my subconscious brain actually goes to cigarettes, which I did used to smoke, but never really liked. But I
Okay.
think somewhere in my subconscious brain, it's like, well, I could get away with one of those, like that's the imaginative
Yeah,
game that I play. I haven't smoked in like 12 years either. But anyway,
sure.
but that's what like comes to mind. But no, I don't fixate on opioids or alcohol in the way that I used to, very fortunately. Um, and you definitely, I mean, the memories of what it was like are very visceral, and I keep those really close. I mean, I think it's important to remember like what that felt like, because if I was ever in a situation or drifted away far enough where using dope again seemed like a viable solution to like my core problem, um, then uh, I would hope I could remember where it's going to end up, and where it
Oh,
ended
yeah.
up was not a pretty picture. When you're in the middle of it, you're like trapped in a world of delusion. I mean, like I, I literally, I didn't even think drugs were my problem. I thought I was unlucky. I thought, that's like how crazy I was. It was not until the very, very end that I was able to connect the dots, and see that the drugs I was using upwards of like 10 to 15 times a day, were the core problem of my
Sure.
life. But that speaks to the delusion that is present in most addictions. And it also speaks to the power and the value of storytelling, because ultimately I had to go into an environment, and for me, that environment was an environment of recovery. Hear other people tell their stories, and and be prompted by somebody to try to start telling my own story, because I needed that to create a narrative through line to see how I got to where I was. Before
Sure.
then, the narrative through line I was coming up with to try to make sense of what I was experiencing was crazy. It was insane. Again, I thought I was unlucky. I thought maybe I had been cursed. Maybe I had like done someone wrong and they had like cursed me. I mean, that's a crazy thought, but I believed it. Um, and so that's the value and the power of storytelling. And look, like throughout the run of Withdrawal, I've tried very, very hard to always partner with a lot of groups that are doing incredible work,
Sure.
actually saving lives on the front lines. It's a very easy, as filmmakers, for us to kind of like maybe take ourselves like a little too seriously. But the core value of filmmaking and storytelling was an essential part of me being able to look at my life honestly, and that's something that I am really proud of. Like my greatest hope of success for this film is that it could be watched by somebody and they would see their own life reflected in it, and maybe they could make sense of their own life, by having watched this movie in the same way that I had to watch every addiction movie I could get my hands on in those first weeks and months of sobriety, trying to make
Yeah.
sense of what I had lived through.
You betcha. Now, you touch on a number of different subjects, clearly addiction, homelessness, sobriety, the toxicity of relationships. Did you use outside sources? Because I know what it's like to have firsthand experience, but did you go elsewhere during the course of making the film, talking to other homeless, talking to other people with broken relationships, trying to get outside influences as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound like maybe a bit of a cop out, but I through my work, in the addiction space, I'm having those conversations on a regular basis, and
Sure.
so it's not something where it's like, oh, I'm writing a film now, so I got to like get out there and like really talk to people. For in this regard, I could kind of be lazy and like just do the stuff I was already doing.
Sure.
And I have plenty of outside experience to draw from. And then on top of that, I made this process as inclusive and collaborative as I possibly could,
Sure.
where, from the actors to the all the people that were invited on this movie, I asked them, it, I asked them to reflect and offer things from their own experience,
Sure.
whatever they feel comfortable with, regardless of whether they had been a drug addict or been homeless. But you know, that's a testimony to the universality of the human experience. We can all understand people in a tough spot doing their best, which is
Right.
essentially like every film ever made.
You bet.
Anyway, so it was, yeah, you want to be as inclusive as possible, while at the same time sort of being confident of the core narrative structure that you're working within. And the more you are confident and understanding of that, the more open you can be to outside suggestion. And I certainly tried to do that on this film, and will do that on every film that I make going forward.
Terrific. Now, when we look at these characters and we watch the journey, there's a whole lot of heartache. There's a whole lot of darkness. There's a whole lot of, I wonder to myself if so many people, sadly, in the world today can self-identify that it's almost difficult to watch. And so, I myself had to stop watching at a certain point the first time I watched it because it becomes very difficult. Ever second guess the choice, maybe to tone it down a bit, to maybe make it a little less intense. I understand where you're coming from, but then there's the audience reaction. What if they're not prepared?
Yeah, no, I've never thought that once. I mostly think like, man, maybe I could have gone a little harder. I look, making a movie about addiction is I found it to be very hard, and it was kind of like trying to walk this very, very narrow path. On one side, you have this sort of legacy of movies about drugs that are very glamorizing. They're very
Yeah.
sexy. They're or on the inverse side of that is they're like oppressive, and like they're like it's just like punching the audience like in the face over and over again, to the point where it's like, oh my God, like please make it stop. It's like an abusive film
Yeah.
experience. On the other side is like films that are like basically a PSA. It's like some sort of like dare PSA, like don't do drugs, kids, like whatever. Very preachy, very haughty, very holier than thou kind of movie. Well, I hate all these movies. I hate them, and I wanted to make a movie that was none of these things. I understand that the material is difficult at times, but it's a movie about addiction. We can't be in the business of pulling punches here. At the same time, I was very conscious to add a lot of comedy to the film, elements
Yes.
of levity, which are essentially just like tension release valves
Sure.
to blow off the steam. I think a lot of the discomfort that comes on upon a first watch is driven by the fact that you don't know what's going to happen, and the tension of like what might happen. I've watched the movie more times than I can count at this point. I was the editor, so I've watched it
Well, sure.
millions of times, and so for the vast majority of this movie is just people talking in rooms. It's not a particularly like violent or abusive or upsetting thing. So, I'm very happy with the balance of hard hitting reality of what it means to be a heroin addict,
Mhm.
with also elements of levity, elements of comedy, and an ending that I think satisfies the premise of the story, but also in a surprisingly expected way, that I think doesn't leave a sour taste in one's mouth. And I truly hope that this is a movie that does get even better on a rewatch.
Yeah.
I believe that it has the story elements necessary for that. And I think on a rewatch, it gets you're less caught up in the tension of what might happen to these characters, and you can actually enjoy some of the twists and subtle sort of story inclinations that we worked really hard to put into every moment of the film.
You betcha. And then moving forward, of course, not only A, where can people also see it, but B, my other question to you is did this film give you any form of closure with anything in your life?
Well, the only closure it gave me was the fact that I've spent the last decade telling myself I was going to make a feature film, and now I have. And you know what? As I mean, I'm incredibly proud of the film, but like, it didn't like satisfy the itch. I feel just as like compulsed to like do it again,
That's good
if
though.
not even more so.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good, but like, it's like not a great. It's like it's a questionable life choice. I would say. It feels like less of a choice, to be honest.
Sure.
Um, what was your question again?
So the film, if anybody else, before it goes off to streaming, wants to see Withdrawal, where are you guys going next? Do you have any idea where people can catch it?
Yes, so we are going to be launching into a road show on 2026.
Okay.
And so we're kicking things off in our home base, which is here in Georgia, in Atlanta. We're going to
Mhm.
be playing for a week at the Plaza Theater, our great sort of historic indie gem of a cinema, where the film had its world premiere. We're going to be playing for a week from January 30th to February 5th. It's then going to move over to
Ooh.
Athens, where
Okay.
the film was shot, at the wonderful indie cinema Cine, starting February 6th through the 12th. So those are our immediate theatrical dates there, and we are putting together our road show from there of the other theaters that we'll be going to across the country and hopefully into Canada as well, throughout the year. And all this will be building up to a streaming release in probably the summer or fall. We'll definitely be releasing it. Not exactly, how we'll window that release is yet to be figured out, but it will be available online later in 2026. And you can follow us at Withdrawal Film on Instagram for all of the updates.
Awesome. What I can say to you is what I've said before, which is I am so grateful that you chose to take the time and your heart and all that you have to put into this film. I think I've mentioned to you before how extraordinary I think it is that you're helping so many people with one film. And I think people take for granted the fact that cinema can actually touch a life on more than just a one-time basis or a few hours sort of thing. So the fact that you have taken something so very awful in your life and touched so many other lives and tried to make them better is extraordinary. And you should be very proud of that. And I'm sure your children will be very, very proud of you as well. Now, I wish I could tell you what nominations, if any, there are, but we don't have a judge that's weighed in yet. So my hope is that today, hopefully tomorrow, you'll definitely know. You'll definitely know by Saturday. I can tell you that because the awards are on Sunday. But to me, you're already a winner. But I think you know that.
Thank you so much. It's been an
Yep.
honor, and thanks so much for having us.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.